Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all sorts of things, zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste. And today we are focusing on sourdough. Here is my starter. Her name is Franny. It is tradition to name your starter. I got my starter from my friend Maria at Living Planet Friendly. I said, this is a piece of Franny. I'm just gonna keep calling her Franny. So I started with Maria's starter about November 2023, and it was a lot of trial and error, and I finally found what works best for me. I'd use different recipes and methods than Maria does, and we both make beautiful loaves. So that's the beauty of sourdough, is you figure out what works for you. You can read a bunch of blogs, watch a bunch of videos, take bits and pieces of what you learn. And honestly, for me, when I was a beginner, keeping a sourdough journal, I kept track of how much I was feeding it every day, how much I would feed it when I baked, how much ingredients I would use when I baked, how long I would bake. And eventually I narrowed it down to what works best for me, my preferences, and my sourdough. Today is dough day, which makes tomorrow bake day. Sourdough is a long process of just waiting for it to ferment. The actual hands-on time with your sourdough is probably under 30 minutes, but the process takes 24 to 36 hours, depending on how long it takes to ferment. I particularly want to share my sourdough method because it is very low fuss. I have bought no equipment to make my sourdough except for a secondhand Dutch oven. I use upcycled jars. I just use tools that I already have. I didn't buy a kitchen scale. And I also bake 2 loaves at a time, so I use the Dutch oven for 1 loaf, and then I just use a regular pan for the second loaf. You don't have to buy any of those fancy tools. I'm gonna show you how I make sourdough at home with just what I already have, to prevent waste, to save some money, and ultimately my goal is to just have some homemade bread. My bread doesn't have to be the best of the best. It doesn't have to be artisanal and farmer's market quality. Quite frankly, I like mine better than what I can get at the farmer's market anyway, and that's the beauty of making stuff yourself, is you can make it precisely how you want it to be. First step in the process is maintaining your starter. I'm going to explain to you the traditional way to maintain your starter, and then also how I maintain my starter, because I don't like to have a whole jar of discard. When you feed your starter, you only feed about 1 tablespoon at a time. As you can see, that is more than 1 tablespoon. Oh, look at her, she is alive. That the rest of your sourdough is now discarded. It is waste. You can use it. So I do encourage you to keep a jar in the fridge full of your discard. I'll go get mine. Here we have her. This is actually my second jar of discard. You can add this to anything, and it's a great vegan egg replacer. There are plenty of recipes on the internet for sourdough discard recipes. Anytime that I do have discard, I put it in this jar or a second jar, but you just can't bake a traditional sourdough loaf with this because this is dead. I haven't fed it in a long time, and therefore it's not actively creating yeast, rise, all of that stuff. Let's backtrack a little bit. What is yeast? It's not a bacteria. I just learned this in botany class in the spring. Yeast is a fungus. So I thought that was very interesting. It is a unicellular fungus. So that is why you have to feed it, because it is alive. It is a living organism right here in your jar in your kitchen. So as you can see, she's kind of deflated right now. She's only at this line of this rubber band. Later, I expect her to probably be up here. She's gonna get some good rise later today. And this is unfed fungus, so it's not doing too good. It's not gonna get you that rise. So when it comes to maintaining your starter, you do have to feed it every day to keep it alive. You can go maybe 36, maybe 48 hours. If you forget one day, feed it the next day, it'll probably be fine. But you really shouldn't go more than 2 days with it on the counter without feeding it. So for me, my proportions are 1 tablespoon of starter, 5 tablespoons of flour, and 4 to 5 tablespoons of warm water. And the difference in water there, the 4 to 5 tablespoons, is based off of how hydrated the starter is, how humid it is, what climate I'm living in, what climate you're living in. And the consistency you're looking for is kind of like banana bread consistency. Many people will often say pancake consistency. I find that too thin for me personally, but if you want your starter to be thinner, it's all up to you. But as we discussed, that creates a lot of discard. Every single day, you're then discarding a 1/4 cup to even 1/2 of a cup of starter every single day. And I don't want to be wasting all that much, nor do I have the need. This has been in my fridge for months. I just don't have the need to use that much discard. If you want to make discard for other recipes, by all means, you can feed your sourdough starter every single day, have that discard, and use that discard to make other stuff. So for me, I have perfected my no discard method. For example, yesterday I fed this a regular amount, which is 1 tablespoon of starter, 5 tablespoons of flour, 4 tablespoons of water. Today, it's bake day, I'm gonna feed it double. This is also a little bit not traditional, but I find that feeding it double yields more starter and therefore yields a more sour, yeasty flavor in the bread, and that is really what I'm going for in my personal sourdough, is that flavor. So today I'm going to be feeding it this entire jar. I'm not gonna discard any. I'm gonna keep all of this starter in here. I'm going to feed it it 8 to 10 tablespoons of flour, and I'm going to feed it about 8 tablespoons of water. So that way it is doubled. And then later in the day, when I use this active starter to make bread, I will just leave about a tablespoon left in the jar, put that in the fridge to hibernate, and now that 1 tablespoon of starter that is required for the regular amount of feeding is ready to go for next time with no discard. And then say in a week when I run out of my 2 loaves, I can then take my starter out of the fridge, feed it regular. I already have the 1 tablespoon of starter. I will feed it the 5 tablespoons of flour, the 4 tablespoons of water. The next day I will double it, and the cycle continues without having any discard. I'm going to show you the regular feeding, and I'm going to show you the double feeding. Once this here has doubled in size, so we go from here to here or even more, that is when we will make the dough. Usually for me, that is around lunchtime. And then the last thing on hibernation, as I mentioned, that's what I call it when I put her in the fridge. Different fungi, different bacteria, is when you put them in a cold environment, they hibernate, just like a bear would. Their metabolism slows down, they don't need to eat as much, and they don't need as much to survive. So they can survive in your fridge for literal months. I don't necessarily encourage that. To keep your starter at its strongest, I would recommend feeding it about once a week, even when you're keeping it in the fridge, maybe every 2 weeks. If you go on a 1 week or 2 week vacation, it'll survive perfectly fine in your fridge. Feed my starter to make dough, and then we'll also start a new starter to pass out at my sourdough class. Now, something else that you'll probably notice me doing as we go about this process, I don't actually ever measure that precisely, because eventually you will learn to feed your starter based off of how it looks, based off of how it feels when you're mixing it. My measuring is not precise. Back in the day, I used to measure extremely precisely, like a 1 exact tablespoon of starter, 5 exact tablespoons of flour, etc., etc. So I'm gonna take approximately a tablespoon of starter from that jar. In this, I'm going to start bulking up for the community starter for my class. So there I have about 1 tablespoon of starter. This is a 2 tablespoon measurer. So I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons, approximately 5 tablespoons. This is my water cup. I simply just warm up water in the microwave. I fill it to about here, so that way if it's too hot, I can fill it with colder water. Here's my water fresh out of the microwave. I feel it with my finger, and I feel that is too hot. If you don't know what that means, perhaps a thermometer would work best for you. I'm gonna add some cold water. There we have it, and now it feels warm, right? It should just be warm. It shouldn't be like, I shouldn't have a reaction holding my finger in here. So now we're gonna do about 4 tablespoons of water. 2 and 4. And simply just mix. I like to use this rubber spatula. I just find wood is really difficult to clean, and metal can actually inhibit fermentation sometimes. So I try to avoid metal as much as I can in the fermentation process. I use this metal scoop, and it has no hindrance to my fermentation. This is actually a little on the thin side. So this is your daily maintenance routine for your sourdough starter. 1 tablespoon of starter, 5 tablespoons of flour, and honestly, I probably could have done 3 tablespoons of water because this was actually too thin. Just set your lid on top. You don't want to actually screw your lid on. It needs oxygen to breathe because it is a living organism, as well as, for say example, you fed your starter all the way up to here, and it needs to double in size. It will have nowhere to go, and it could explode your jar. So at least here, if it did have the rise of the century, it would just leak out. And if you want, you can add a rubber band, so that way you know when it has doubled in size. I really encourage people, especially beginners, use the rubber band or a dry erase marker or a Sharpie, as you can see I've done there, to really get to know your starter. When it comes to first-time bakers, I think it is really important for you to understand how long it takes to go from here to here. In the winter, sometimes I will like wrap a towel around it to help keep it warmer when my house is colder and things of that nature. So this can really help you gauge when bake time is. We are gonna feed this double, meaning approximately 10 tablespoons flour. I actually do usually closer to 8. Again, this is a 2 tablespoon measure. 3 and 4. And then for water, let's start with like 2.5 waters because I want it to be a thicker consistency. If there is visible signs of flour in your starter, you need more water. It can definitely be thick, but there should be no dry flour in there. And there is definitely dry flour. So I'm gonna go in with like another 1/2 tablespoon of water. And just like anything when it comes to using flour, you don't want to over mix it. So once it is incorporated just like that, you leave it be. So for here, I'm gonna raise my rubber band because we are now at about that height. So you can see the difference between these 2 jars. This one definitely has more, this one has less. This is the daily feed, this is the double feed, and this will be turned into dough today. I only feed it double when I'm making dough. When I'm just maintaining, I feed it the regular amount. Let me also show you what the consistencies look like based off of the thinner one, which is perfectly fine, and the thicker one, which I prefer. Okay, so that's thicker. and that's thinner. I think you can visibly see the difference between those two. You can see this one's like a little chunky, and that's what I like to go for. This is more, I think, pancake consistency, and this is more banana bread. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, here we go. We're at about lunchtime. This is the community starter. It's a little bit bubbly. It's not risen as much as I would hope. That's okay. I have a few days to bulk this up. So basically for this, when I teach a class, I'm going to feed it double tomorrow and then double that the next day and then double out the next day. So that way I have like 2 jars worth of starter to pass out. I have plenty to go around. And then this is my active starter that I'm going to make dough with. I'll probably give it like another hour. If you look at it closely, it'll probably be hard to pick up on the camera. I can see that it's still domed on top, meaning that it is still rising. So I want to give it as much rise as possible, even though it has already doubled. Also, many sourdough experts will say that you actually want your starter to be just a little bit hungry. So you want it to rise and then fall just a little bit. So that way when you feed it in the dough gets a good rise on it. And I find that that helps actually a lot. So I trust the experts. That is a good starter right there. But what you don't want to do with your starter is let it fall all the way, right? Like this morning, technically my starter was still active, but it would not have produced a very good loaf had I instantly made dough with it. I like to feed it, let it get enough energy, fall back ever so slightly, and that is when I'll make dough, probably about in an hour. She has grown more. Honestly, she's still domed on top. I could let it go longer, but I don't have time today. So we're gonna send it. We're gonna go ahead and get on to the next step, making dough. A bowl. For mixing, you will need bread flour, you will need warm water, approximately 5.5 cups of bread flour and approximately 2.5 to 3 cups of warm water, and then approximately 2 tablespoons of salt. I use my hand to measure. I don't actually know how much salt I use. It's all vibes. Bowl acquired. Excuse me, I need to reach behind you. I warm up my water in this bowl. I do roughly measure the water, and I do roughly measure the flour. And guess what? My sourdough turns out fine. Okay, we have tap water that I will microwave for about 30 to 60 seconds, depending. Then I once again use my finger to see what the temperature is. Okay, when the 60 seconds goes off, that's when I give it a little mix and feel. King Arthur. I have tried generic. I just don't think it does as well. I use generic flour to feed my starter. But for making the bread flour, you can use all-purpose to make your bread. This just has more protein and structure. This is what I use. This is what I prefer. And then for feeding the starter, I don't think I mentioned it, all-purpose for feeding bread flour for baking. That's the last step here. Let's get the water. It's time to make some dough. First step, water. We're gonna feel it. We're gonna make sure it's warm. Warm, not hot, not cold. Warm. And we're just gonna add all of it. If we need more later, we add more later. But that's what we add for now. And this is how much salt I do. 1 of those, 2 of those. I think it actually ends up becoming about 1.5 tablespoons. I think it really helps bring out the flavor of the bread. Add less if you want. Now the star of the show, dump her all in. Of course, we save 1 tablespoon so that we can maintain our starter. Oh, look at that. She is beautiful. And then I just get in there honestly with my hand to scrape it out. You can use a spatula. That's about how much I leave in there. I just kind of leave it all on the edges. Gravity will do the trick and lower it all the way to the bottom. For now though, this is all we need right now. We're gonna mix until it's mostly dissolved. Some of this sourdough is a little bit chunky, so you can like get in there with your hands and break apart the chunk. This is where someone who had tools would use a bread whisk, and it doesn't have to be perfectly. See, there's like some chunks in there still. Oh, another tip, let as little sourdough down your drain as possible. It can cause clogs. Approximately 5.5 cups of flour. It usually ends up about that for me, and sometimes I have to add a little bit more water. But once again, I go based off of texture and consistency. You will learn that as you bake. So we've got 1, 4, 5. Again, going with a bread whisk here, I find that also then I can get precisely the consistency that I want. Some people want their dough really dry. Some people want it really wet. This is actually looking pretty spot on. But I do have some dryness under there. So I will probably take just a splash of water. I don't warm this up, literally just like 1 tablespoon or 2 to help remove any of that dry flour from the edge and from the bottom. And that is a really great consistency. Don't knead it at all. You want it to incorporate and no more. It looks really, really shaggy right now, but as you'll see over the next few steps in the process, it will start to come together. Here's a clean finger. If you poke it, maybe like a little bit of residue comes off, but overall, it's not gonna look like this hand. If your clean finger comes off looking like this, your dough is far too wet. And if you can see visible signs of flour, your dough is too dry. If you've ever made like soda bread, it's kind of that consistency. It's kind of like scone consistency. It should be a little bit wetter than cookie dough. It should not be runny, right? Like it's not pouring out. Hopefully that helps explain what the consistency is actually like in person. We'll wipe off as much as we can. Let me talk about these 2 things. My remaining starter, let's get a good look in there. Look at that fungus. She is beautiful. From here, if you want to be a daily feeder, you could go ahead and feed this your regular amount, your approximately 1 tablespoon of starter, 5 tablespoons of flour, 4 tablespoons of water. For me, because I like to do as little discard as possible, I'm going to put the lid on fully this time, put her in the fridge, and now this amount of starter will be ready to go the next time I bake. As I explained before, I will take it out of the fridge. I will feed it regularly. On day 1, on day 2, I will feed it double and make dough, and therefore I have no discard. The same process will repeat. I will dump it all out. I will save 1 tablespoon, and the process continues. So let's go hibernate her. As for this dough, you're probably wondering, what the heck? I'm supposed to make sourdough with this? It's so shaggy. It is not coming together. And that is the next step in the process, which is the stretch and folds. Set a timer for 1 hour. So approximately every hour, sometimes I hit snooze and forget about it, we'll come and do the stretch and fold 4 times. And then after that, we move on to shaping. I will show you this along the way. I just wanted to explain that it's gonna look really shaggy right now. This is precisely what you want it to look like. And then every hour that you do the stretch and folds over the next 4 hours, your dough will start to get smoother and smoother. It will start to develop bubbles. It will start to rise. And I'll see you in approximately an hour. All right, everyone. It is time for the stretch and folds. It's the same day. I was filming other YouTube videos. Spoiler alert, I film like 3 to 4 videos per day. I just change my clothes. A stretch and fold is literally, I'm gonna try to do it with my left hand so that you can see. You stretch, fold, rotate, stretch, fold, rotate, stretch, fold, rotate. You get the idea until you get all the way to the edge. For me, it's usually 4 to 6 rotations. And there we go. As you can see, it's already so much smoother than it was. That's all you do. No kneading, nothing else. Just make sure it pulls away from every single side. We will cover it, and we'll be back in yet again another hour to do the same thing over and over and over again 4 times. So technically, you will do this next step after your 4th round of stretch and folds. So you do your 4th round of stretch and folds, you wait an hour, and then you do this step. I have waited several hours, probably 3 hours, because I went out. It has risen ever so slightly, but it is fine. But as you can see though, like look how smooth she is now. She's nice and smooth compared to this from before. This is about what you want to look like after 4 rounds of stretch and folds. So now you're going to split it into 2. Have your 2 bowls ready. They can be plastic, they can be glass. Plenty of people recommend glass because then you can see the rise easier. You don't want anything in here. No oil, no flour, no towel. And if you have a banneton, you don't put them in the banneton yet. That will be our next step. Get your dough ready. We're gonna split it in 2 roughly. If you want to do it strategically, you can use a kitchen scale. And we're gonna do what we call in the industry shaping. You can kind of do shaping however you want. And this is the step where you would add any add-ins. If you wanna do chocolate, if you wanna do jalapeno cheddar, if you wanna do freeze-dried strawberries. Scrape the edges, plop her on the counter. So seriously, I just go in with my hands and do roughly. We'll set 1 to the side. We'll focus on 1 at a time. For me, I like to flatten it out into a sheet. This is where if you've got like a bench scraper, it will help you out. I don't have one, I use my hands. This is where you add your add-ins right here. And then we're gonna pull the top about halfway, the bottom about halfway, rotate it lengthwise, pull it up into a ball. And now we're gonna make a J shape or candy cane. So you're gonna go up, pull down, push up on your right side, come down. I guess if you're left-handed, you could do it oppositely. And as you can see, it forms a really nice ball when you do that. It gets a nice stretch on top. The bottom is a little bit ugly, but that's okay. We only need one side to be pretty. You don't have to go too far. I usually do maybe like 5 rounds or so. Place it in your bowl, your unoiled, unfloured bowl. Set aside a sheet. Again, if you want to add add-ins, now is your chance. Otherwise, your loaf is going to be plain, and that's totally fine. I highly recommend perfecting your plain loaves first before moving on to add-ins, because the add-ins can be a little bit different for bake time, for fermentation, making sure that you incorporate it correctly. But like, you do you. If you want to start with add-ins, go for it. So as you can see, now we have our 2 loaves. They look very cute. We are once again going to set those aside. We will give that 1 hour for the final round of shaping, which is exactly what we just did. Only difference in the last step is we're going to make sure that we oil and or flour our bowls so that way that they don't stick to the bowls overnight. So see you in an hour. I hope you appreciate I turned on the big light for you. It's like 10 p.m. I'm really tired, but the show must go on. Last step for tonight. This is round 2 of shaping. We're going to add some oil to this bowl before we forget. About a tablespoon. Really, you just want enough to coat the bottom of the bowl, maybe 2 tablespoons. I usually do it a lot on accident. The edge of the bowl and the bottom, because your dough will hopefully rise basically to the top of this bowl. That's probably a little bit too much oil, but I'm not going back now. And it is truly, it's tacky, but look at my hands, perfectly clean. It should not be sticking to your hands at this point. If it is, you probably added too much water somewhere along the way. And then we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna stretch down, we're gonna stretch up, turn it sideways, roll her up, and look at the bubbles starting to form. Up, back, back. Let's see, that's 3, I think, 4, 5 J's should be good. We should have a nice little dough ball. I also like to get the entire dough ball coated, and then I leave the smooth side up. And then the exact same thing over here. Flop that out. Oop, oh God. Way too much oil in this bowl. I'm gonna have to dump some of that out. Same thing, stretch up, stretch down, flip it, roll it. This does not have to be perfect, as you can see. Toss that loaf around. And also at night, I like to get my towel re-wet, so that way it stays nice and moist. We're gonna put the towel back over here, and essentially that will keep the top from drying out, hopefully. So it is around 10 p.m. I'm gonna leave these overnight. I wake up around 6:30 on Saturdays. It will probably be pretty good to go at 6:30, but I probably won't get around to baking until 7:30 or 8. So what is that? 10 hours is usually about what I do, maybe up to 12. My house being warm, that's how long it takes. If your house is cold, especially in summer, like if you keep your house like, 66, 67, 68 degrees with the AC, your loaves will probably need more time to rise. And essentially you're looking for doubled, maybe a little bit more. Here's my loaf now, and typically it will reach the level of the bowl. So that might be a little bit over doubled. Some people might not recommend that. Again, with this one, here's where it is. It'll get to the top. I'll show you in the morning. You will learn what your preference is. You will learn that maybe you prefer to bake at the 8-hour mark. Maybe you don't want it to reach all the way to the top of your bowl. Maybe your bowl's a different shape than mine. Whatever it might be. When in doubt, go for about doubled, and you can see what it tastes like, how it bakes from there. And then after that, you can move on. Like, should I ferment less next time? Should I ferment more next time? Should I ferment it in a different place? Like maybe if you put it on top of the stove with the light on it, that's a little bit warmer. Maybe the top of your fridge is a little bit warmer. Maybe your house is too warm and you need to put it somewhere dark and cool. This entire process is about experimenting, seeing what works for you, seeing what you like, seeing what you don't like. Again, really recommend your sourdough journal. Sometimes if I am doing sourdough on the weekend and we sleep a little bit too long, it's a little bit over fermented, but like a little bit under fermented or a little bit over fermented, you're gonna be fine. What happens is when you go way over fermented, right? Like if I were to leave it on the counter for 24 hours, not good. Now let's say though, tomorrow I'm busy at 7 a.m. and I don't have time to bake right when I wake up. What you can do is when you wake up, put them in the fridge. You can put them in the fridge for like 2 to 3 days. I have gone longer than that and the bread sucked. You could also put them in the fridge right now. You could do your shaping, put them in the fridge immediately, and again, do like the 2 to 3 days slow ferment in the fridge. If you're looking at blog posts and other videos and stuff, this is what we call the bulk ferment. We leave it on the counter overnight. But for now, I am going to go get some rest. I'll be more refreshed to see you in the morning for baking, which is probably the easiest part. It is in fact a different day. I am wearing the same shirt. I could definitely stand to see them rise a little bit more. We prepare the oven. I usually do like a soup pot, but it is occupied in the fridge. So we're gonna do this pan, and then I don't have a lid for it. Well, I do. That's too shallow for my sourdough. I will just put some tin foil on top as a lid. This works just fine, but please make sure that your pan can withstand high temperatures. I once put a metal pan that I thought was totally safe into the oven, ruined the pan because it could not withstand 500 degrees. I no longer bake at 500 degrees either. I do 450. I got the secondhand on OfferUp, I think, for like $40. And this is my other go-to favorite piece of gear, this bread sling. It's a reusable option. Otherwise, you should use parchment paper in this ceramic because it will stick. I'm gonna put it on 450, maybe just like slightly above 450 to preheat the pans that are in there. Once the oven is done preheating, then we will add the loaves, bake for 20 minutes with the lid on or covered with tin foil. So after the 20 minutes, I lower the oven a little bit. I take the lids off and do another 15 or so minutes. Sometimes it's closer to 10, sometimes it's closer to 20. You just gotta keep an eye on it depending on what temperature you leave it at. If you're really serious about this, you might wanna get an oven thermometer that you can actually place inside the oven. So let's add this one first. I usually do whichever loaf ends up being bigger in the bigger one. Beside that, and I just shake it right out. I did forget one important step. I don't do it, but this is the stage in which if you want to like carve a design on your loaf, you would do it now. Transfer this, a cutting board, cut your design, and then transfer it from the cutting board into your pan. You don't have to cut a design into it. The design essentially just allows you to control where the loaf splits, because your loaf is gonna split because it's gonna grow. I'm like instantly eating my loaves. I'm not selling them. I'm not making them pretty. I don't care about them being pretty. If you care, by all means, do that at this step before you put it into your hot pan. We will see how they split this time. Hey Siri, set a timer for 20 minutes, and then we'll just remove the foil. And hey Siri, set a timer for 14 minutes. Oh, that one's definitely done. Oh, this one's perfect. Yeah. If you tap your bread and it sounds hollow, it's done. So these are both done. You know, this one could maybe use another minute. This one could have used 2 less minutes. This pan always bakes faster. I like it a little bit more on the golden side and less on the brown side. This will still be perfectly edible. It's still perfectly fine. The bottom is fine. Now I want to answer a few probably common questions. Do you have to make 2 loaves? No. You could do my recipe in half and make 1 loaf per batch. I like to make 2 loaves per batch because they freeze really well, which is probably question number 2. How do you eat 2 loaves of bread so quick? I don't. I keep 1 on the counter and then I keep 1 in the freezer. But I did just open my last freezer loaf. So these are both gonna go in the freezer for future use. We buy really big tortillas, so it's a plastic bag that freezes really well. I freeze them in bioplastic bags that don't last as long. I don't love bioplastic bags because they're not quite as airtight. So I will use the bioplastic bags out of the freezer first and keep the plastic ones in the freezer for a couple weeks. I don't do any special tricks. I just thaw them out in the drying rack in the sink. And then honestly, it tastes just about as close to fresh as you can get. Another common question, can I eat them right away? No. I mean, you technically can. No one's stopping you. It's not like illegal. Your bread will have the best results if you let it cool all the way. Your handling it can squish it, can make it dense. Same with the knife pressure. It can kind of ruin the overall texture and consistency of your bread. So it's highly recommended that you allow it to cool all the way. Cooling rack is great. I've not always had a cooling rack. Before I got a cooling rack, I would put out a cookie sheet with like a little lip and then prop them up on the lip. So that way there was still some airflow underneath. Basically, you don't want to set it flat on something because it can get sticky, it can get wet under there. And you also don't want to leave it in your baking dish because it will continue to bake the bottom. If you have more questions, leave them down below. I will also leave some of my other favorite resources down below for sourdough making, as well as my full written post about my recipe. I have this all written down, published to my blog that you can check out down below. I had a friend use this recipe recently. She has never made sourdough ever, and she followed my instructions on my blog step by step and she made a perfect loaf. So I think the blog post is written pretty well. You know, if you don't want to watch a 20-minute video over and over again for your sourdough recipe, definitely check out the blog post, save it, print it out, whatever you need to do. I'm happy to answer all of your questions down below in the comments. I'm happy to answer all of your questions in a future video. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you need to know. Anyway, thanks for coming along. This was a lot of fun to film. I hope that this was helpful for you and I hope that you feel inspired to make your own sourdough. If you know me in person and you want some starter, happy to give you some. If you're looking to order some starter online, definitely check out my friend Maria. That's where I got my starter. You can have a piece of Franny as well. She sells dehydrated starter. I should probably dehydrate some of mine. It is a great backup. You know, if I accidentally forget to feed it for a couple days, if I drop the jar, whatever. If an accident happens, I think I should definitely have some extra starter just in case. I will probably post about it to shorts. So stay tuned over there. Definitely subscribe if you want more sourdough content and also just eco-living content. I talk about all sorts of things, zero waste, as you already know. Once again, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. But until then, remember that your small actions make a big difference in the long run. Bye, guys. Actually, no, I didn't get to anything. The lighting is horrendous. That is slightly better lighting.